Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the toolkit from one of the world's most influential consulting firms. We're going to break down the structured way of thinking they use to solve these massive, seemingly impossible problems, and how you can start using it too.
So, you're facing a really complex problem. How do you tackle it without getting totally lost in the weeds or, just going with your gut? Well, there's a secret, a disciplined process that can turn these messy, ambiguous challenges into clear, solvable pieces. All right, so let's dive into this journey. We're going to walk through the 5 core stages of their method. We'll start with how to frame a really messy problem and take it all the way to delivering a solution that actually gets results. Now, this is interesting. The whole process, it doesn't begin with facts or data. It begins with structure. Before you even think about looking at a single number, you need a framework to organize your thinking. This is a core principle, and it all starts with one simple but incredibly powerful idea. And that idea is MISE. It's pronounced MISI, and it is the absolute foundation for clear thinking. It forces you to break a problem down into pieces that don't overlap. That's the mutually exclusive part. And it makes sure you've covered all the possible angles. That's collectively exhaustive. No gaps, no overlaps. And this lack of structure, it's not just something you see in small companies. As this former consultant, Bill Ross, found out when he went to GE, it's common even in huge, successful organizations. And that's exactly why applying a clear framework isn't just some neat trick. It gives you a serious competitive edge by bringing order to all that chaos. So, the go-to tool for applying MISI is something called a logic tree. Check this out. It visually breaks down a big, fuzzy question like, how can we increase our profits, into smaller, totally separate parts. For a company like Acme Widgets, you'd break profit down by each business unit, and then break each of those down by revenues and expenses. All of a sudden, you've got a complete map of the entire problem. Okay, so once you have that crystal clear map of the problem, what's next? The next step is to form an initial hypothesis. Now, this isn't just some wild guess. It's an educated theory about what the solution is, and it's going to guide all your work and save you an incredible amount of time. This question right here, it gets to the absolute heart of the philosophy. See, it's way more efficient to spend your time proving or disproving one single strong hypothesis than it is to just sift through mountains of data hoping an answer will magically appear. A good hypothesis gives you a roadmap right from day one. But how do you know if your hypothesis is any good without, wasting weeks on it? You run it through what they call a quick and dirty test, or QDT. You just take your idea, ask yourself, what would have to be true for this to work, and then do a quick fact check. If it holds up against some basic logic, like does a new technology actually exist, then it's worth dedicating real resources to proving it. Okay, so you've got a working hypothesis. Now you've got to prove it with data and analysis. But the key here, and this is a big one, is to be smart and focused. The temptation is to analyze everything, but that is a classic trap that just wastes time and energy. This quote from Bob Buchsbaum just nails it. You have to fight that temptation to boil the ocean. That's the phrase they use for trying to analyze everything. Instead, you focus your analysis on what's directionally correct. In other words, good enough to prove your point and make a decision without getting lost chasing some kind of unnecessary absolute precision. And for those really tough problems where there's just no direct data, you can triangulate. Take this real-life case of trying to figure out the market size for a new drug. By looking at similar situations, like Viagra and obesity drugs, you can start to define the likely limits of the answer. It gives you a ballpark figure that's actually more than enough to make a big strategic decision. So, you've done your focused analysis. You've got the data. But gathering data is really just the start. The real value, the thing people actually pay for, comes from interpreting it, from finding that crucial insight. This is where data starts to tell a story. And the 80-20 rule is one of the great truths of business. And it is a super powerful tool for finding that insight. What it says is that in a ton of situations, roughly 80% of the effects come from just 20% of the causes. And here's what that really means in practice. Your job isn't to find every single cause of a problem. Your job is to find that vital 20%, those few key drivers that are causing most of the trouble, and then focus all your efforts right there for the biggest possible impact. So, for every single piece of analysis, every chart, every fact you uncover, you have to relentlessly ask this one question. So what? What does this information actually tell us? What action does it point to? If a fact doesn't have a clear so what, it's probably just noise. And you have to remember, decision makers, they don't pay for data. They pay for the value-adding insights you pull out of it. Like Jeff Sakaguchi says here, the whole goal is to generate insights that have a real, tangible impact. Okay, final step. You might have the perfect analysis and a world-changing insight, but it is absolutely worthless until it's been communicated, understood, and accepted by the people who have to act on it. This is the final critical piece of the puzzle. McKinsey presentations are famously effective for one big reason. They use inductive reasoning. Instead of slowly building a case with data and saving the big conclusion for the end, they start with it. The structure is dead simple. We believe X, and here are the 3 reasons why. It's direct, it's powerful, and it respects everybody's time.
And you can't underestimate this. The ability to structure and sell your ideas clearly is what ultimately separates a good idea from an idea that actually makes an impact. As S. Neil Crocker puts it, it's a killer skill. It can honestly feel like an unfair advantage. So at the end of the day, this whole structured thinking thing isn't just some niche consulting technique. It's a universal toolkit for bringing clarity and impact to your own work. The real question is, how are you going to use this framework to structure your next big idea and turn it into real action?